Hi there guys and gals. I'm just doing a quick vid on, I've just had a go at making my own mosaic pins. So I thought I'd have a quick, just show you through the process that I followed and maybe some of the little bits and things that I found helped as I was going along. Obviously the first thing is, it's quite a simple process, but there's quite a lot of steps to it, so I do suggest, when you do yourself a little list or something. I kept missing things out and I was running in there and bloody everywhere trying to sort things out. Also, the reason I didn't film it the first time round is it was the first time I'd done any mosaic pins. However, I split the materials I'd got into two halves. So, and basically the actual copper rods and the pars, I'm going to show you, they came in like 300mm lengths. I cut all those down to 150s just to make it a bit easier to manage, and luckily I did, really. Very lucky I did. Trying to do it in longer pieces would have been much more difficult. And result, hopefully, I'm sorry to come over here, but hopefully you can see that's come out. On the other side I haven't cleaned up yet, but they actually came out quite nice. Hopefully that's focusing. So I'm really pleased with that. And then what I did, before I rested on my laurels, so to speak, was I took one of the bars and I cut them into the sort of lengths I'm likely to use. And what that did was that's allowed me to sort of like just, check right the way through the bar that everything's okay. And as you can see there, so I was very pleased that, everything, fingers crossed, came to fruition and it all worked. So yeah, so there worked. So a couple of things I would say initially is, whatever you choose to do, keep it simple. I kept a very simple design. This is something I just thought, well, I had a bit of a look around and there's just about anything you can think of is already being done. So I just thought, well, what the heck, I'll choose what I want and then set them into the handle the way I want to set them in. Trying to keep everything straight as well is the finer all the bars and everything else you want to get in, the more difficult you're going to find to keep everything straight and neat, so that everything actually matches in. So even when you cut them into the sort of like the pin sizes, that the things are the same both sides. So yeah, so try and obviously keep your designs a little bit simple. Also, when I did the epoxy I used, you could potentially just get away with something like a simple 5-minute epoxy. I mean, I'm not using for this, but whoops, I mean, I've gone onto the G-Flex for my handle scales, simply because it's what everybody says is the best. So that's all the reason. I can't compare the two. I've not compared. Prior to that, I just tended to use like the Araldite. The one thing I would say is I don't use the 5-minute Araldites on handle scales and things like that. I don't like it. I don't think it's good enough. I have used Araldite, fast setting and slow setting for lots of other things. Now, I've never had a handle come off that I can remember or that anybody's told me, but I do know that the slow setting has always given me a much stronger bond. So that's why I don't use the fast setting for handle scales, ever, or anything like that. However, on something like this, I don't think it would matter. Anything you've got in your drawer, I think would be absolutely fine, simply because there's nothing going to be going in there to push the pins out. It's really just to make sure you've got a good bond in there and they're solid enough when it comes to machining them and cutting them. Another thing is I've actually seen it recommended that you make sure when you cut them with a cutting wheel rather than a hacksaw, and I wondered why, to be honest. So of course I had to go. But what I find is it's much easier to damage and to push the tube out of shape and the other things inside with a hacksaw, because it tends to bind. Whereas if you're using a cutting disc, it just cuts straight through them. So that's why. So it did actually work. The other thing, obviously, is to keep everything clean. The cleaner you keep everything, and the more care you take, the better things will get. So what I'm going to do is I'll try and keep this as short as I can, and I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll show you each process that I do, and then sort it all down. So I hope you find this of some kind of interest, and I'll talk about the stuff I use as I'm going through. 3. So, like I said, the first thing I did, I got my bits and pieces and I've got them all cut down to size. I also deburred all the ends, both inside and out of the tube, so that any epoxy can flow. With the little rods I've used. Then, basically, what I did was every single rod going in there was given a good rub down. And then what I've got is a chainsaw file, and I use the chainsaw file on the inside of the rods. That's what I'll do here. So all of them, get a good rub down. Now basically what I did, collect everything up, pop it into a jar or something similar. This is quite big enough. And a wee touch of acetone, just to make sure everything's cleaned and degreased. You get the rubbish out the inside. Yes, I should have gloves on for this. In fact, I will anyway, because I'm going to need it very shortly for the resin. And then oh, doctor! Right, here we go. Once they've had a good, once you've given them a good wash and a good slosh around, they can all be taken out and then put to the side to make sure that they dry while we get on to the next stage. I don't know if this will show up too well, but you can actually see there's little bits of muck and things and stuff floating around in there. I'm just going to put this out of the way. I'll decide what to do with it later. There we go. Don't need any more. Put that back. There we go. Now I'm going to put these just to the side. You can have a little bit of a clean up. And then what I found, obviously this is an experiment you're going to have to do for yourself, but what I found for something along this lines, and these are 7mm tubes, was I needed about 10mm of epoxy. So here we go. Hopefully I've got a good 5mm left in each of these. Like I say, I'm just using this is just as I went to the G-Flex, this has just given me a really good way of using up the araldite. Go. I don't know with this, you don't have to be perfect, but right, time for a good stir. And for this sort of quantity, you're wanting a good, knocking on for a minute really to make sure you've got it really well mixed. Right, there we go, that's had a good go. Now basically, what I'm going to put is a few drops of the black dye. You can get proper resin dyes, and there's a lot of other things you can use. Just a few drops of this certainly worked well and everything went off right, so I'll be putting the same sort of amount in again. This is an oil-based dye. That's just about 4 good drops, that's all. Whatever colour you like, whatever colour takes your fancy. Let it settle. Now that will be full of air. Now, not massive, not huge bubbles, but it's still full of air. So the first thing I'm going to do is just warm it very slightly. You could probably do this in a microwave or something like that. But I'm just going to warm it very slightly, if I can, without sending everything all over the place. Be careful. Don't forget, I'm using a little plastic pot. But I say, from this you actually see the bubbles start to rise once it warms and it softens. So I'll leave that at that before I get too warm. And the next stage I'm going to bob this into my little vacuum chamber and suck some more air out. I'm doing this the opposite way around this time to see if this helps. The last time I did it, I used the vacuum chamber and then warmed it. So this is a bit of an experiment. Sorry about the noise. There we go, and as you can see, as that vacuum climbs, the bubbles start being pulled out. I'll give this probably 2 or 3 goes. See how much she froths up this time. But I can definitely say by warming it slightly before I put it into the jar, that definitely reduced the amount of frothing going on, so there must have been quite a bit of air came out, and it probably bubbled a lot easier when it was a little bit warmer. So, and it looks a lot smoother as well now. So I'll just move some of this out of the way. So the next stage now is basically, while that to settle, and I'll warm up again, is just to bob your pins together. This is you might have had to have done this beforehand, depending on what you do, but because mine are quite simple, it's only going to take me a couple of seconds just to bob 4 of each of these. And with them being, I've used some slightly thicker rods, so I'm not using anything really fine and detailed. I can see them going all the way in. One of the tips I have seen is to make sure that when you put the rods in, that they stick out a little bit at the ends. And especially if you've got anything thin, that's prone to that will be prone to twisting. But again, I can line all these up, and they go straight. And 4. There we go. And I'm just going to give this a little bit more warm and then crack on. The reason I've got my hand here is if my hand's only just feeling nice and warm, then I'm not going to be melting the pot and destroying anything. You can actually see the air bubbles rising even now. They're obviously, as it gets warmer, they're obviously expanding a little bit. And obviously then, having the resin slightly warm makes it a lot softer and a lot more flowable. I don't know the term, flowable. There we go, that's looking quite safe. Over here, and then you can I'll just show you the last couple of steps. So what we have here is the syringe, and as you can see, I've wrapped basically just a bit of duct tape around the end just to broaden the end, and what that does is that's to give me a tight fit just into the end of the rod, like so. Like I say, it was the original plan was to put the tube over the end, which would have been here, and then suck the resin up, which would be a lot cleaner and a lot less messy. But unfortunately, the best laid plans. I also have a number just out of sight of little pieces of tape, and that is once the resin's in and I'm happy with that, then I can put a bit of tape over, stand them up, stop the resin from coming out. So the first step is obviously to draw some of the resin, and even this isn't easy. It takes a bit of time to pull into the syringe. There we go. Clean that off. It's a bit of a messy process, this is why I'm going to have to find if I do this again, I'll find maybe get a better syringe or something like that. Oops, just make sure there's no bubbles in the end. I'll go 2 or 3 mils there. Then it's a case of in she goes, nice and tight, and then press. You need to keep hold of the little tubes at the end as well, or they will start to wander out. And then all I'm doing basically is just applying nice firm pressure and waiting to see the resin pop out of the end. Oops, I'll try and put that over here if I can just move myself around a little bit. I might be able to show you. And there we go, hopefully you can just see that. Got that resin coming out of the end, make sure it comes out of all the holes. There we go. Just keep everything tucked away because you're going to find you've got this stuff's going all over the place. Tissue and off. Bit of tape. There we go. Wrap it round. and then stand that up. I think my syringe is a bit knackered, but anyway, you get the idea. So as you can see, I've got the resin right the way to the end. Wipe some of the what I've done on my fingers off the tube, and then into something just to keep it upright. There we go. And on with the next ones. Right, well, I'm not too sure why this time I've only managed to get, well, I've got a bit left and it's a bit gunky, but I think the syringe is a bit knackered. That's what you get for reusing a syringe, but everything seemed to come off. But anyway, I definitely haven't got enough. I'm not even going to attempt the fourth one. I'll just do a remix and do that one separately. I'll probably get a new syringe before I do it. But, take them off and get rid of that. So yep, so we have here, that's the 3 that I've just managed to get done. There's plenty of resin come through the ends. They'll just sit there now, nice and straight, preferably not touching each other so they don't stick together, for the next 24 hours. And then hopefully they'll all come out okay. So I'm not sure why I only mixed 10 mils the last time, just the same as I did with this one. And I've got one left. I've got a spare. But I'll do that one again. I'll do that later and probably get a new syringe and see if that was my problem. Time for a clean up. I nearly forgot to say. Always try and make sure you've got a bit left. So I keep my pot. There's a bit of resin left and everything else. Especially everything was fine last time, but just this will allow me to make sure that the resin has properly gone off and everything's hard. Which could be an issue if you've put too much dye or something like that in there potentially. So it's just a good check to make sure that you know everything's gone solid in there. And yeah, baby tip. So yeah, so like I say, I'm reasonably pleased with that. It wasn't too bad. Didn't take me too long. It's obviously a lot cheaper to do this yourself, depending on how fancy you want to take it. I've kept mine pretty simple, which I'm pleased about. It was enough fuss and faff and learning curve, keeping it nice and simple. But yeah, that definitely helped. This second set definitely helped warming it before I put it into the vacuum, getting as much air out as I could. It also flowed a little bit easier, but as you saw a couple of times, I showed you in real time, it takes a bit of getting through. One little tip that I actually just got from then is what I did was I had everything nice and straight, and obviously this works because I'm using a slightly thicker rod, is I could squeeze the resin in, then hold the syringe, and then push the tubes back, and that helped to force things, and that actually speeded things up. It got it through a lot quicker, and it all seemed to come through more consistently. So maybe that helped, maybe it won't. I wouldn't probably advise that if you've got lots of small pieces in there. They'd be far too easy to bend and twist. So like I say, but keeping it simple shouldn't be too bad. So with that, hope that was reasonably interesting, guys. Thank you for watching. If anything crops up or anything pops up, I'll obviously stick it on. And I will catch you on the flip side. So see you later, guys.